NJ Spotlight presents its Roundtable series, New Jersey's High School Diploma Under Debate. This program was recorded in Trenton on Friday, October 26, 2012. This program is brought to you by the New Jersey State Chamber of Commerce Foundation. On the web at njchamber.com. The panelists in this program are Christopher Cerf, Commissioner of the New Jersey Department of Education. Casey Crable, President of Raritan Valley College. Stanley Corp, Program Director of the Education Law Center. Gemar Mills, Principal of Malcolm X Shabazz High School in Newark, New Jersey. Peter Renwick, Principal of Westfield High School in Westfield, New Jersey. And Jeffrey Scheininger, the Board Chairman of the New Jersey State Chamber of Commerce. The moderator for the program is John Mooney, Education Editor and co-founder of NJ Spotlight. In this program, Chapter 3, Audience Questions for the Panel. Leading the discussion is John Mooney from NJ Spotlight.
I'm going to open this up a little bit. This is the fun part for me, we have some special guests here, and Peter made mention of it. We have some students who have lived through these tests and have a sense of how these go over in their own lives and among their peers. We have students from Shabazz High School and students from Westfield High School. I guess they couldn't get enough of their principal, so they decided to come down. But let me start in the back. We have Melissa Windborne and Saskia Anderson, who are the salutatorian and the valedictorian of their classes at Shabazz. And I'm curious, you've heard the folks talk about this, and the adults here talk about it, and I'm curious your reaction to some of the things they say, and your own sense of whether these are remedies to a problem that is faced at Shabazz and among your friends and peers.
Personally, I do believe that the implement for the CCSS is a wonderful idea, you know, because we do need to prep our students so they can be more prepared for college, so they can change the world. However, I am concerned, as Mr. Mills brought up, what about those in urban areas? What about, like, my peers who are still struggling with the HESPA and who possibly won't pass ASA? What about those students, and how will they be affected by this new core curriculum? I feel it will be a burden on them because, as we all know, the class of 2013, I believe the class of 2014, they do have, meet, I believe, 60 community service, but the classes after that, they changed the curricula for them. So now on top of that, do they have to do that? They also have these new tests at the end of the year, and there's no backup plan for the CCSS. So if they take that test and they do not pass it, they ultimately won't graduate high school. So with their HESPA, for example, if you don't take HESPA, you do have another chance to do it with ASA. So there is a backup plan in case, something does happen. But with the new curriculum for CCSS, it does worry me, as well as other people, that if they don't pass it, ultimately what happens to them? We just say they can't go to college and they're not prepared for college based off of that one test. And I do believe that creates an issue.
Okay, thank you. Saskia, we spoke a little bit about, you spoke about some of the issues that this isn't necessarily just about high schools, and there's a question raised by somebody of shouldn't we discuss not just college and career preparedness, but maybe high school preparedness and through the middle schools and elementary school.
Yes, I do believe that implementing this test is good, but it will affect the elementary school kids as well, because they will have to change the curriculum from an early age, and they'll have to build up to that. But what happens to the students in between that? They missed out all the early preparation, and now they just have to start from right there and then. And not even that, I believe that this new test, it won't be hard for them, but the HESPA is equally the same. And I'm saying that, I'm trying to say is that if the kids don't take initiative then, are they going to take initiative now that they're trying to be implement this more hardcore college type of test. Like, I'm basically saying that they need to start taking initiative now, but they're not doing that. So what makes you think they will do it when this new test is implemented? I mean, if they did it before, obviously we won't have this problem. But it's a student problem. It's their personality. If the parents get involved, I believe that it could change. But it's not only the assessments. It's not that the assessments are hard. It's the students. It's a problem within the students. That's what I believe.
Yeah, I mean, she raises an important point, and I'm sure any one of you can speak to it, is this isn't just about high schools, and this isn't just about, even specific subject areas, but building this down into the lower grades. I mean, I'll give you an opportunity, Commissioner Cerf, on expanding on that.
Well, it's an excellent point, and it sort of speaks to sort of an unutterable truth in this world. That is that when you fall far behind, whether it's a third grader or a fifth grader or like it is much harder to catch children up than it is to get it right in the first place. And so there's no question that if we don't sort of focus on the early years and get those right, then we got a very steep mountain to climb. And if that's a point I agree with. I will tell you that these Common Core standards are progressive, starting in the very early grades.
Yeah. Who developed? Somebody asked,
yeah,
and who developed the Common Core? What's the short answer on that?
Well, first of all, you uttered the word that we've all been trained not to utter by calling them national standards,
okay.
Which makes the Republicans angry and the Democrats angry and everybody. So these were actually developed by. They were developed. First of all, this was an initiative of the Council of Chief State School Officers and the National Governors Association. It's a voluntary association of individual states who essentially thought the benefit of scale. It's being the sort of fiscal agent, if you will, is the state of Florida, and they are in the process of subcontracting some of the item development to various private entities. I believe Pearson is one, and ETS is another. I should know these things. I'm on the park governing board. But that part, actually, most of the work was done by public officials up to the point of subcontract.
And this, I mean, this, if I'm right, came out of a trend that actually started under the first President Bush, if not even earlier than that, where we were starting to set. And IBM and a few key players from the business community got involved in it as well, where there was the push, through first Bush and Clinton and the second Bush, and really led to No Child Left Behind. So this predates all of us on this topic. I've been covering education long enough, but I remember when Bill Clinton visited IBM Center and pushed the whole notion of Goals 2000 and the like. Let me jump over to our contingent from Westfield High School, and actually one of them even submitted a question, which we'll hopefully get to as well. But we have Jennifer Mandelblatt and Ben Schwartz, seniors at the school. Again, same question. You're hearing the adults talk about this stuff, and is this your world? Does this address concerns that you think need to be addressed, and is it, from a student's perspective, the way to go?
Okay, so I'd like to begin with saying that I've been tested a lot, so I know what these are like. I've been taking the NJ Ask ever since I was at the beginning of elementary school, and I do not like tests, but I think they are necessary to an extent, because in the end you have to try and quantify knowledge. You have to try and assign a point score to how much people know, because this is an unfortunate analogy, because we have to, as schools, we have to promise to deliver a certain product to whoever's looking. We have to promise colleges that the product, I don't like calling myself and my friends and all students products and not living humans, is up to their specifications. Now, in a business, if your test to do that can't catch all the defects of your product, then nobody will buy from you, nobody will accept your product. So that's why the current HESPA has to go, because as the data in the report showed, it was not catching all the problems. A newer test is necessary, and it appears that this test will work to find the people who are slipping through the cracks, and maybe even work, if continuously done, to fix the problems that cause people not to pass the test in the first place. And if we can renew trust in New Jersey schools, then it'll all work better for the rest of us, I think.
Great. And Jennifer?
As the current testing stands, there's a discrepancy between what we're learning in the classroom, what's being tested on the exam, and what we're supposed to know when we enter college and career. And I think the PARCC assessment is a step towards improving that. I spoke to a teacher last year. I was writing an article for my journalism class about No Child Left Behind, and the issues between learning the material that the syllabus dictates and the material on the HESPA. And the teacher said that there was the teacher couldn't set the standards for her own students because the HESPA dictated that. And I think that the current PARCC assessments and the way that there's exams at different intervals allows teachers to determine this is what my students need to know at this point and this is what we need to work on. And I took an AP, the AP US History course last year, which is a lot of information. And I mean everything between Pocahontas to the current administration. And through that process, and it was preparing for the end of the year exam, but even through that process, I learned a lot because I knew that the exam would be testing what the course syllabus said, not some foreign concept. It was something that I was learning in class. And through the process, my teacher was able to walk me through if I needed help on an FRQ, if I needed help on a multiple choice test. I was walked through that process. And in the end, I was able to pass the exam because of what I learned, not what the test, not some foreign concept for the test. And in the end, I want to walk at graduation with all of my peers. But I also know that we shouldn't be part of a mere statistic. I have confidence in my ability to pursue my higher education and a future career because of the opportunities I've had at Westfield High School, but we need to put back significance on the diploma, and there needs to be confidence in ourselves that we can pursue future plans and not just pass a single test, and the PARCC assessment will do that.
You had a very specific question. I don't know if it's even been determined, but on these end of course tests, are they geared towards the I guess you asked about the calculus test, and I don't know if there'll be an end of course calculus test, but even if an end of course geometry test, is it going to be an honors level geometry? Will it be a basic level geometry? I mean, does it speak to the even gradations within a course? Do you know?
So this gets a little complicated because the answer, of course, is it depends on where we set the test score. But one of the things that our current tests do very badly now is to evaluate differences towards the ends of the bell curves. And so we want to have enough items and enough rigor at various points so that you can really differentiate levels of learning, both at the low end and at the high end. But in terms of what we're aiming for, and these are very important decisions the states are trying to make right now, it is aiming for competency at the Common Core standards. And whether you denominate that honors, high honors, or basic or proficient, I think it matters less than that they actually reflect basic competency at that.
I'm curious from a business point of view. Are you looking for honors? I mean, what is the level that even that you've been talking about?
John, I'm going to do a pivot.
Okay.
First off, I want to thank all four of the young people who spoke so eloquently.
They're not done yet. No, they're coming back.
They really stood up. Takes a lot of courage, guys. I get it. My public school system abolished final exams after 3rd grade. The first time I took a final exam again was when I walked into college and had to compete against the kids who were taking Regents in New York. Want to guess how well that worked out? And what you're hearing from all four of these young people is the same thing, and that is a quality test that is informed by a quality curriculum can in fact improve the education they're getting. That's their message. That and personal responsibility, I heard you. And getting on early on, as soon as you're right out of the gate, I heard you. But that's the message that the young people are delivering to the grown-ups in the room, and I wanted to reiterate it, make sure it got heard.
Okay, and I actually wanted to ask, because I've had a bunch of questions to Gemar and his students as well, in terms of your worry about the adjustment to this. What do you need? And I'll ask you. I mean, if this is to work the way you want it, I think you're saying that the end goal is a good one. But what do you need to get there? And what don't you have now?
So, for example, one of the students from Westfield described, taking an AP course. And I even speaking with my students on the way down, we spoke about AP courses. And as I explained to them what we were going to be discussing on the panel, they were saying, oh, well, that's what I do currently. I'm in AP Calculus, I'm taking AP Lit, there were things like that. But there is an abundance of tools that are available to the teacher who actually created the syllabus for the AP course. So we're going to prepare students for end of the course exams, then those type of materials must be available to teachers for them to have the opportunity to create a syllabus that they think will best prepare a student for the end of the course exam. And I'm not saying that it won't come. I'm sure it will. We have 7 years. However, we don't have it right this second. So I can appreciate, getting more information.
But what are your hurdles? Are they training? Is it resources? Is it, parental expectations? Somebody asked about that. I mean, obviously not all of this happens in schools in terms of student performance. I mean, what if you had the toolkit? What would you want in it?
I think it's all of the above. One of the things that I focus on and what's most important, parents socially and emotionally do a lot for the child, but teacher quality is of utmost importance. So therefore, if they're not trained, if they're looking at the Common Core and don't really understand it, if they can't map a curriculum to the actual test to say that these are the things I need to pinpoint and my students need to learn, most importantly, in order to be prepared for the test, then that's a big issue. So definitely professional development is something that needs to be focused on to make sure that the people who are given the tools can actually transfer that information to the students in a way in which it's retained. Not that they're just remembering facts, but they're actually looking at word problems, extracting the information, and creating a problem to solve. If a teacher isn't able to do that, then we have another issue. And again, that's my pet peeve. That's actually one of my core beliefs in my building. Poor quality instruction, there is no excuse for it.
I want to get your opinion on that, guys. You worry about some of your peers. What do they need? And what is it? Resources? Is it teachers who will teach them differently? Do either of you want to take that one on?
I would definitely say that in our area, our students do lack motivation. We do lack the resources as well.
You can talk up a little bit. Just move it closer to you, yeah.
We do lack the resources, and we also lack the motivation. If you come to our school, we might not have the technology or stuff that other schools may have, and I do feel like that hinders us even more. So it's like we can go up to our highest potential, but it's just some of the circumstances that we are in now won't allow us to go above and beyond.
You all right? Okay. I mean, what did you and I, Commissioner, and I want to hear from others on this in terms of resources, not so much dollars, but I know that this plan, and if you read the whole thing, it's more than just imposing tests. There is talks about supports and what happens for students who don't pass. Expound on that a little bit. We've had New Jersey's alternative assessment at one point was called the SRA, and now it's the Alternative High School Assessment, aptly named. It has been somewhat controversial as maybe not being as rigorous as it should be. There was a lot of tightening of it in the last couple of years where it's been used less, and I think there's a lot more confidence in it. Talk a little bit, and I'd like to hear this from others on the panel too, about the issue of what happens to kids who don't pass these measures and what remedies there are for them. And I also want to get into, and this is a subset, but it's in terms of these kids, it's a pretty big one, is special needs students who have very specific challenges. But one of the folks in the audience asked about that. But let's talk about those who don't pass. What happens, and how do we prevent them from dropping out and getting discouraged, like some of the kids have talked about and others on the panel?
I think it starts with the following question: we have an enormous, at least in financial terms, investment in our schools. And by the way, I think that's a really good thing. I've been sort of misunderstood on that point. I think not only is it a good thing, I think it is a good thing to invest even more resources for children who come with a larger set of challenges, and that can be in a variety of different ways. It could be your children of immigrant origin who don't have English exposure to English at home. It could be kids with particular special education needs or the like. But in order to do what we need to do to address deficits when we identify them, we need to ask whether we are deploying our generous but limited resources as effectively as possible. So pivoting a little bit to the earlier question as I answer your question, we should be spending every resource we can find to make sure children can read by the end of the 3rd grade. That turns out to be highly, highly, highly predictable. You know the old saying, you learn to read and then you read to learn, and you sort of make that transition right around that age. So whether that's one-on-one tutoring, whether that's Saturday school, whether that's small group instruction, whether that's some kind of digital deliver, whether it's all of the above, whether it's more investment in early childhood, that's really, really important. And the question again is every dollar that we are spending right now deployed to get, if you will, maximal productivity? That is, to get the greatest yield in terms of educational outcomes, which is another fancy way of saying learning, for children. The same is true for children whom these end-of-course examinations identify as having particular deficits. What I personally would like to see, although this is an idea that's very notional, is if in say the 10th or 11th grade you've been identified as being able to read or do math or do geometry by those levels, at the levels that are necessary, instead of saying, well, here's a smorgasbord of courses, right? You can take this cool course or that cool course or this neat thing. Let's say, okay, you know what you're going to study this year? You're going to study what you don't know now that keeps you in the space that is short of what you need to know in order to be an effective high school graduate. So that is redeploying existing resources in a much more targeted way. Again, it could be with tutoring, it could be small class instruction, and the like.
I'd like to hear from the colleges and business too, but that have provided remedial education for years now. They must have something they figured out in terms of how to teach kids some of these skills on a relatively quick basis. I mean, what are the lessons of colleges and their programs that might be relevant for K-12 as well?
Well, I'm not sure about, that we need to actually be the ones to teach the teachers, because we think that competency exists in each of our K-12 partners, but we think in this transition time, there's certainly a way for every county has a county college. And that county college is a powerful resource to the educational community as well as to students. And we think there's a way in this transitional time to build a system that allows us to be part of the solution for students who haven't met the competencies that are being asked, as well as for students who have and want to go on in perhaps more quickly. When I went to high school, you went all the way through the 12th grade, and then there was this great big transition to higher education. And some made it and some didn't, and that was purposeful. And I think that one of the things we've not noticed, perhaps so clearly, is that that's not the way it is anymore. That really our job is to help more people make that transition, and there's nothing magic about waiting till you're 18 to make that transition. We've done it with AP courses before, but many, many children are ready for advanced courses in one area while they're still developing skills in another. So I think there's an opportunity in this transition to look at education from a more purposeful point of view. And I think each county has resources in both their K-12s and their county college and all of the state colleges and universities that are located around the state to really build a comprehensive way to transition us from the system we have now to a system that prepares students.
Stan, you have followed ASA as close as anybody I know. Congratulations. And speak to the effectiveness of that. I mean, you talked about a relatively high dropout rate, and that's with that system. Even so, but I mean, talk about you've worried about what happens to these kids.
I think the issue with ASA is the canary in the coal mine concerned about especially English language learners. 2/3 of the English language learners in our state don't pass the HESPA language arts, and so they use this alternative to meet state standards. I am totally supportive of replacing the current assessment system with a different assessment system. My argument is all with the stakes, not with the assessments. But I have a lot of problem with the format, with the framework of assessment that uses assessment to move a lot of decisions about teaching and learning away from educators, away from schools, and put them in the hands of bureaucrats and politicians. That has not worked very well. And it's also, I think even the commissioner would agree, that previous rounds of new tests have not always been accompanied with better instruction and better, resources in order to meet the higher goals of the new tests. So I think what we need is not to put all our eggs in this Common Core basket. I think we should experiment with a couple of other forms of assessment. I've been trying to lobby the commissioner to look at the model of the Performance Consortium schools in New York City, which is a network of about 40 to 45 schools which got a waiver from having to implement all the Regents' exams. And they have extremely high success rates with a very representative population of the New York City high school population because it's based on a teacher-driven school-based performance assessment where kids have to do tasks, they have to give presentations, they have to defend their papers before boards of experts and communities. And I was very pleased to see in the task force report at least the speculation that there should be a local option for districts that were developing subjects in these other areas or assessments in these other areas so that they might be able to do that. And I think this is an example of what I meant before when I said this is an opportunity to kind of correct some of the misuse and overuse of standardized testing by looking at some other alternatives in two areas. One, performance-based assessment in some of the non-park assessments, and two, an alternative, not a lower expectations track, but a high-quality track of an alternative assessment besides the standardized test, to replace ASA with performance-based assessment that's school-based, that invests in the ability of educators to do better assessment. One of the problems, about paying attention to all these standardized tests is the research is pretty strong that the biggest indicator of student success is grade point averages in high school, irrespective of the quality of the school, because the grade point averages give you a nuanced understanding of a student's ability to read the expectations of an institution or a teacher, to negotiate those expectations by finding help with adults, of the collaborative culture in the school as to whether that help is available for the student to have focused and sustained academic support. Grades are also the thing that teachers invest in most in terms of their assessment. It is no part of the conversation because a lot of the assessment framework right now is about using data to move decision-making away from schools. I know there's a belief that this is improving the ability of teachers to do assessment, but it's actually de-skilling a lot of teachers in a way that is not helpful. So I think there is opportunity for a lot of alternatives here, and I really would hope that we could find some other ways to advance this besides giving Pearson more contracts.
Let me ask the educators in terms of testing. And we're going to have to close up pretty soon. And somebody mentioned, we're talking about weapons and arsenals and silver bullets and, victims of tests, and any wonder why parents and students are terrified of testing. And Stan talked about performance tests, and we, in fact, our biology test, at least the last I checked, is a performance test where they have to do tasks. And the AP test is, to a degree, Jennifer spoke about it, where you're doing, you're culminating or bringing together research to write essays and doing some of that kind of work. Is it the kind of tests that bug people? Is it, are there other ways? You probably have some excellent teachers who use all kinds of different assessments. Talk about how we can sort of take the scare out of testing from an educator's point of view.
Well, I absolutely agree that there is value in all kinds of different kinds of testing, and performance-based assessment is extremely valuable and should be used and used whenever possible in experiential learning and determining how through experiments and through practical application you're gathering anecdotal evidence. So there are many other opportunities. I think that you then also have to come back and have some measurable standard as well. So I think it can be that, and I think the word was used before, this is, the smorgasbord of courses, and maybe it was Commissioner Cerf that said that maybe that's not the option for when you're not doing well, You must focus, and there's a prescriptive way to focus when you're not doing well. And I really appreciate, and always do, Ben's comments. He said, identify the problem and then fix it. That's a great example in remediation. And in the task force it talks about this, and in a lot of different ways, I've seen it from the department in other ways, there is local authority to do things if you're doing well. And I've seen that, and we're an example of that. If you're doing well, just show us that you're doing well. We have the opportunity to see that you're doing well. Now you do have that smorgasbord. And there are many different opportunities. There's online opportunities, there's performance-based opportunities, there's community service, there's ways of making things relevant in an AP government class, which is where our students are from, where they're gonna do, a mock election. And they're gonna have, all the students involved in the class, and the whole school community is gonna be involved. What's the assessment of that? Well, it could be, Jen is an excellent orator. She's on our model, both Ben and Jen, model UN. They might just do a presentation to talk about what happened that day. They might talk about what were the issues that were talked about around a table, like we did before this one. When the kids came in and they took a vote, but they also talked about the issues. Maybe there's the opportunity to talk about that in a presentation. And that might be, based upon a rubric, based upon some measures of standard of ability to bring in argument, ability to bring in data, and to present to your classmates. Lots of opportunities. But when you get down to it, some students aren't going to succeed. What's the prescription? I think this helps us to get to that point.
Gemar?
I think there are many options that we have, and I also agree that there has to be some type of standard. So for a long time, HESPA existed, and we know that it's on its way out, but it was something that allowed us to utilize as an indicator for success, okay? But in terms of options, I definitely believe that project-based learning is something that we can take a look into. If we flip it, receiving a doctorate degree and prepping for that, and actually going through the coursework to do the research, choose a thesis, and actually creating a dissertation, and then defending that dissertation. That's an option as well, including a standardized test, where we actually have students prepare as a freshman ideals for what they would like to research. And then as a sophomores, decide what that thesis statement may be. And then as a junior, create 10 to 15 pages of what they've decided to research on. And as a senior, develop a panel, and then for them to defend the research that they've actually delved into. And that may be something for maybe a literacy assessment.
Is that, and I know you have to run. We're losing the commissioner who's going over to the State House, so I won't keep you, but speak to it. Are those types of alternative approaches doable in addressing some of the concerns you're talking about?
Not only are they doable, we're doing it. I mean, one of the and we actually have I think actual unanimity on this point. So what we want is that this evaluation system be based on learning outcomes, how much children are learning. But we have allowed enormous amounts of flexibility, completely, by the way, in social studies and science. We said we're not mandating that. If you want to have a performance-based test, if you want to design your own learning objectives, now we are going to police those just to make sure they stay within the lanes of the high expectations we all need. But the particularity of it is something that we think there should be a huge amount of local discretion on. And I think even more fundamentally than that, we all associate tests with these fill-in-the-bubbles, right? And that's not what the PARCC assessments are. So let me give you an example. On the math section, it's actually a performance-based test, right? Here's a data set, right? And now what we'd like you to do is to design an experiment based on this data set. Or here are 3 primary documents. We'd like you to take a position on some matter of historical importance or current matter. These are performance-based opportunities. You write, whether on a keyboard or otherwise, you write, you analyze, and it's much less, what year was the War of 1812 fought in? There's much less of that. It's an old history teacher joke. Yes. So I think we are moving that. And I think to Stan's point, we actually, I'm glad we did it this way because I don't think we had any other choice other than doing nothing. But we let our aspirations exceed, get in front of the quality of our tests. So we built evaluation systems, we built whether it's NCLB or teacher evaluation systems, and so on, and built them upon a foundation of tests that were not as up to the standard as we would like. So now that we are, with, by the way, $1 billion of federal money supporting public money, taxpayer money, not private money, supporting the development of these better standards, I think that will create a better foundation for this to work.
Well, he said the word unanimity, and I will take advantage of that, where we actually have some agreement on the panel. I want to thank them all. I hope you can give them all a round of applause. And I want to thank you guys as well, and especially our students for coming down and being part of the discussion. Please fill out the surveys because that helps us a lot. And come to our next show. We'll be doing one on teacher quality, and we'll put information on the site for it. But thank you very much. Travel safely.
For more information on NJ Spotlight programs, visit the website njspotlight.com. We produced this program in the studios of Lubetkin Global Communications in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, on the web at lubetkin.net. For everyone at NJ Spotlight, this is Steve Lubetkin. Thank you for joining us, and take good care. NJ Spotlight, where issues matter.